I do everything with my hands. I talk with my hands. When I talk, I'm moving my hands. I can't keep my hands still, honestly. I wasn't always raised by my parents. I was raised by my grandmother. And my first time landing in the garden, I was like 2. My mom dropped me off at her house. So my grandma, she's like, you have these big hands. So she always had me picking peas, hulling peas, like anything that was in the garden, slopping the hog. She always had me doing things, even when I was 2 or 3 years old. I love honeysuckles or picking muscadines. When I was in the 3rd grade, I had this friend named Troy. We had a fence that split our houses, and we had a muscadine vine. Some grew on my side, some grew on his side. We would just come outside and pick muscadines, eat them, throw them at each other. You know, we were kids, so yeah. I guess I've always been outside doing something with my hands, like always. At 13, my mom passed, and I go to live with my uncle. He decided to give me a dog. He was like, you gotta walk the dog, you gotta mow the grass, you gotta make sure you pick up after yourself. We're gonna cut these yards, we're gonna work on this car. I was so rebellious. Like most teenage boys are, I didn't wanna listen. Now, that's not me saying anything he was telling me was wrong, but mainly because I just felt like that side of my family was one of the reasons I didn't have my mom anymore. We're fine now, but I carried that with me for a very long time. I went to college in Jackson. I kind of got away from my family. I went like 2 or 3 years not talking to my family at all. Nobody thought I would graduate college, so when I told them I graduated, they were like, you graduated? But then they came down for my graduation in droves. I walked across that stage and they were the loudest people I could hear. I was like, man, these people really love me. And now I carry that with me to this day. It was just a big moment in my life. I never knew I would be doing this food court. And doing this made it come full circle to be doing this again and just think like this is like poetic justice. I would say an example of how I use my hands today is when I'm helping out with the kids in the garden. I'm holding up packets of compost or packets of soil, and we're going to take it to the raised beds or the double dug beds, or I'm high-fiving one of the kids, or we're typing up lesson plans, and it just helps me know where they're coming from, and I can relate to them because I understand it differently than someone who hasn't been through that before. I'm hopefully a role model for them so that when they grow up, they can come back to communities like this and do the same thing I'm doing for them. Everything comes full circle. And I wouldn't change anything, especially with this AmeriCorps program. Just being in the Delta, the close-knit communities, you stay in Shaw for 2 weeks and everybody knows your name. Everybody knows who your folks are. Matter of fact, the first thing people ask you in Shaw is who your folks. I think it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, AmeriCorps Food Corps fits into my story because it puts me in a position to help people. They have provided me a network because I'm not from here. So it helps me do my service better. We do taste tests. We're tearing down the walls of food insecurity that have been there for years. And kids, they bucket moan and they say, I don't want to eat it, but they try it and then they're like, oh, this is good. And they take it home to their families. The message is simple. If Mississippi loses Food Corps, it loses its agricultural future. Mississippi is the biggest agricultural output for America. So Mississippi needs AmeriCorps. If you lose your servants, you lose your leaders. Because the servants are building a platform that the leaders can stand on. And if there's no platform for the leaders to stand on, where do they stand? How will they be seen? How will they be heard? Mississippi's future depends on America. America's future depends on AmeriCorps. How do I know? I grew up like these kids.